Wait, this sounds interesting. Historian answers Cold War questions?
I'm historian Michael Kimmage. Let's answer your questions from the internet. First question, when did the Cold War start and when did it end? 1945, that's the date of the Potsdam Conference on the outskirts of Berlin. That was Winston Churchill, Joseph Stalin, and Harry Truman. And what you can see is that the two big superpowers, the US and the Soviet Union, are beginning to divide up the world in a certain way.
I mean, you can also see that they're mogging Churchill. Like, look at this, dude. Look at he's cock-shamed, really. They look proud and confident, and he's like slouched. His posture is bad. Look at this. This is good posture. Smiling, open attitude, arms outstretched. This is defensive. Hat over his dude, protecting himself. No, I could tell. I could tell that Churchill's getting mogged here. Churchill was wasted for sure. I mean, Churchill did his job here, okay? He's actually obviously a great wartime leader, but to my understanding, not very good after that. There's a very credible argument that he is personally a big part of the conditions that created the Great Depression. Not even kidding. Not even kidding. He's got a lot to answer for.
2 years later, 1991, the Soviet Union itself collapses.
Holy f***, that's my birth year. I always feel so fucking old when someone talks about the year I was born in like a history presentation. It feels so weird. Welcome back to USSR. Yes, I am the living embodiment of the USSR. They died and I was born. That's why I'm glazing China. Yep, you got me.
When the Soviet flag is taken down over the Kremlin and the Russian flag is put up. That's on Christmas Eve, 1991. And with that, the Cold War is definitely over.
Damn, crazy that I was alive for the Cold War. It's kind of base, dude. You guys don't, you fucking Zoomers don't get it. You don't know what the Cold War was like. I lived through it. I did fucking a tour. If anything, I ended it. If anything, the United States and the Soviet Union had a fucking vicious Cold War for decades, and then I showed up and and I was like, stop, enough. And it was done that year. Is that not aura? I handed them a Pepsi.
What was the height of the Cold War? The height of the Cold War was definitely the Cuban Missile Crisis. US oversight, spy photography got a missile launch site that was being created on the island of Cuba. And when you think of how close Cuba is to the US, 90 miles from the tip of the state of Florida, you can understand why this was of such grave concern to American military planners.
Yeah, but that's Florida. I mean, I get it if it was like right off the coast of Texas or California, but like, okay, they bombed Florida. Are we gonna notice? It's not even gonna make the news with all the shit coming out of Florida.
It's a Soviet embarrassment, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it's something of an American success.
JFK handled it pretty damn well. I watched a documentary on it. He wasn't so good at dodging bullets, but outside of that, he had a lot of skills. Trump could do it better. You're so right. We needed someone with the diplomatic tact of Donald Trump to handle the Cuban Missile Crisis. You're so right.
Let's take a look at this map of the world. It helps us to see that the world divided up in the Cold War into three basic camps. You have the Soviet-Chinese camp on the one hand, you have a US-led camp on the other.
It is so fun how China was the little bro for so many years, and now Russia is the omega little bro of that relationship. It's like you thought your older brother was cool, and then you grew up and now you're playing in the NBA or something, and your older brother is smoking meth in the garage. The tables have turned so hard. It's unreal how far ahead China is and how they don't have to listen to Russia in any way. And they were always little bro before.
The biggest one is in Vietnam. That's the ultimate domino, where the US feared that if Vietnam fell to communism, Laos, Cambodia, and other neighboring countries would fall as well. And so the US pushed itself into an unnecessary war because of this theory.
I mean, Vietnam was one of the biggest mistakes ever, man. God, it was such a stupid thing to do. You didn't stop it? I was like, no, guys, don't. You're so sexy. I said, no, LBJ, you're so sexy. Ho Chi Minh's beard was so long, though, for real. Are you saying that we should have invaded Vietnam, killing a lot of people, losing a lot of American lives because Ho Chi Minh's beard was too long and we needed to shave it? It's not that I oppose your goal. I just think we could have sent in, imagine a young Joe Biden. He's only 60 years old at the time. We put him in all camouflage and we airdrop him in with a razor into Vietnam so that he can sneak it at night and shave the beard himself. That would have been more surgical.
Was there ever something built like fallout vaults during the Cold War? Absolutely, there were fallout shelters that were built during the Cold War. You can still find some of them in the vicinity of Washington, D.C.
The Fallout game is real? I can get a Pip-Boy and I can shoot a rad roach? Badgest!
If there had been a nuclear war, these fallout vaults would give you 10, 12 hours of peace, security, and safety, and then the game would still be up. So it was a psychological device, like the duck and cover exercises where students were given instructions of what to do during a nuclear war. It helps us to understand the strength.
The idea of ducking under your wooden desk in case a nuke falls is so funny. It blocks the blast.
This is the city of Berlin, and after the Second World War in 1945, Germany and Berlin alike were occupied by the Soviet Union, by France, by Britain, and by the United States. And the city of Berlin is divided up into 4 zones, but really the French, the British, and the US zones are one zone. You could describe that as the western zone of the city, and the Soviet zone was the other part of the city.
I think more cities should be divided in 2 down the middle, though. I think it'd be fun. They'd make their own little cultures. I feel like if you split in LA down the middle and then came back in 20 years, it would be fucking wild. Lakers versus Clippers. Dude, the Lakers half of the city and the Clippers half, and somehow traffic would double despite having less cars.
I don't understand the collapse of the Soviet Union. How does a government fall without any violence? What held it together when Stalin assembled the Soviet Union in the 1920s and 30s was coercion and violence. Mikhail Gorbachev comes to power in 1985 and basically says, we want to run the Soviet Union without power and violence. And what happens is that the nation states of the Soviet Union, including the Russian nation state, basically say, we no longer wish to be a part of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union collapses.
Yeah, I think this misses a really, really interesting story of what happened at the collapse of the Soviet Union, which is that Gorbachev here, yeah, he made the reforms, and the reforms were getting rid of the power and the violence and the coercion that held everything together, sure. But he's not very popular for these reforms because things are still kind of broken. So he's making these reforms that make it easier to speak out, but hasn't actually made things better. So everyone's speaking out about how shitty it is, but now they can't even be pressured to be silent. So he's not very good, right? And he gets kidnapped. He gets put under house arrest by a hardliner group of older communists who want to bring things back to the power and coercion era. He gets kidnapped. Like they put him under house arrest, and then they go on TV, like national TV, and they're broadcasting this basically soft coup. He's still alive. He's in the house arrest. They have this soft coup, but the soft coup is terrible. It's like, apparently, the way it's described to me is like, it's a live feed, not edited, and they're like, their hands are shaking and they're all old, and they don't project power at all. And they can't even say whether or not they're gonna like actually arrest or kill Gorbachev. They're just like, we need to make our demands heard. And so it's this weird, like bad, and already everyone's upset and mad, right? So then they have the Soviet tanks go to the I don't know what the Capitol building is called, or the White House equivalent, but like that is where Boris Yeltsin is, and Kremlin, I'm sorry. And Boris Yeltsin, who ends up being the president of actual Russia, is like the guy that comes out and he like laughs and chats with the guys in the tank. And he's like, you're not gonna shoot us, are you? And you get this iconic photo of them like on the tank. And it's like, it kind of like ends the whole idea that they're gonna have any threat. And Yeltsin's not that great a guy actually, but he giga chads it in this moment. And then Gorbachev is freed. He comes out and he's like, all right, I'm back. And he expects to be welcomed with open arms and just be the leader again. But everyone's kind of vibe check moved on. It really just is like this weird vibe moment where everyone's like, nah, we like kind of with Yeltsin now. I think it's all over. I'm not kidding. It's essentially what happened. This weird little mini coup sets off a vibe check that sets off everyone going like, let's just end it. And then obviously, a lot of shit goes south in Russia. And then Yeltsin leads to Putin. The way I heard about the direct impacts of Glasnost was through that book, Patriot, Navalny's book, where he just talks about growing up under it. And it was like, you couldn't say shit. You weren't allowed to criticize anything. And then one day you were, and then everyone started doing it. And suddenly it was like, oh, they don't know what they've opened. Now everyone was openly shit talking the situation. And then things were getting out of hand real quick. He took one bite and became a capitalist. The Soviet Union fell in 1991 when Gorbachev had a slice of delicious deep dish pizza from Pizza Hut, single-handedly collapsing The Berlin Wall. The shit went so dummy. It was like Ratatouille. It was like the Ratatouille bite, dude, and it single-handedly ended the Cold War.
When the Soviet Union was created, it needed to show to itself and to the outside world what it represented, and so the Soviet Union came up with the hammer and sickle that you see on this flag. The hammer and the sickle represented the two pillars of the Soviet economy. The sickle was agriculture, the hammer was industry.
What would our two items be on the American flag today? One would be short-form video scrolling, and the other would be a burger and gun. Burger and gun. It would be somebody gambling on DraftKings and someone taking a hit of a Juul. YouTube Shorts and iPhone and truck. We don't actually make the iPhone. I like that, but we don't make the iPhone.
Why did the USSR invade Afghanistan? So this is one of the things that sinks the Soviet Union. It invades because it had a communist partner in Afghanistan. Soviet Union is very quickly led into a quagmire in Afghanistan. The US supports the Mujahideen on the other side and incurs a lot of costs on this part of the Soviet Union. And most importantly, the Afghanistan war creates a lot of discontent within the Soviet Union.
It's so f***ing cosmically crazy that the United States successfully is able to help the Soviet Union get locked into a quagmire in Afghanistan. It's mostly of their own making. See how terrible it is for them, their troops, their economy, their morale. Total disaster. And then within Joe Biden's lifetime, we're back in Afghanistan. We're doing the same thing. We are doing this. We are locked into a quagmire. How do you watch that mistake happen and then do it? It's, are you gonna finish that? It'll work for us. 2 decades later. Yeah, it's not even that far. In terms of a human life, that's not even that long of a time to be like, okay, well, we'll do it though. They thought it was a skill issue. They said, I understand it now. Watch this drive. Nah, pass it here, lil bro. Let me show you how it's done.
What is your favorite Cold War movie? The Cold War classic, Dr. Strangelove, which takes the whole story of nuclear weapons, actually in a very careful, considered, and thoughtful way, and makes us realize that a lot of the people who could control these weapons could also be crazy.
Dude, the movie is actually really funny. I know it's black and white and you're thinking it's a snoozer. I watched it with someone recently in a hotel room. We were like on a trip. We were waiting for something. Where did I watch it? Oh, I watched it at Genesis with Bobby Scar and all the smashers I was staying with. We just watched it. This is recently. I don't know why we watched. It was a shock. I thought I was so ready to not like it. I was like, dude, why are we picking this snoozer? Let's watch The Matrix. Honestly, I was like, I didn't want to watch it. It was actually really funny. It was good, dude. It ends with them like the nuclear war the nuclear bombs about to drop. And the world about to end, and everyone's like, oh, it's all fucking over. But then some guy's like, well, yeah, but we can get all the world's hottest women and go hole up in a bunker. And then they're all like, hell yeah, this. It's like how it ends. It's.
Why did the USA and USSR make so many nukes? This question takes us to the heart of the Cold War. Cold War was always about perception of the other side. So if the US had a new weapon, the Soviet Union had to take note, and it felt that it had to compete. By the early 1950s, both sides have the capacity to completely destroy the other, but they feel the need for more nuclear submarines, nuclear weapons that you can deliver with airplanes. So you have a massive arms race between these two countries where huge amounts of money and scientific research goes into nuclear weaponry because each side was always afraid of the other gaining an advantage. You can think of a lot of better purposes that the federal money could have been spent during the Cold War than on nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Bigger nuclear weapons. Keep it up with the Joneses moment. Yeah, it does feel like they were trying to like hang out with their rich friends and buy a nice Gucci bag. We could have built a giant hat. That would have been fucking sick. A giant burger. I mean, we shouldn't have not gone for a nuclear victory. We should have gone for the cultural victory and built a giant burger and then shipped it to Russia. And once they tasted a bite of that, they would have ended the war.
How come we don't talk about the Korean War as much? The reason is that the United States didn't win the Korean War and it didn't lose the Korean War. And in a sense, the Korean War never comes to an end.
It is crazy how many people died in the Korean War and how intense it was. If you look at the map of the Korean War, if this is the Korean Peninsula, this looks like a dick. It's just not a dick. It's This is not it's not a hanging dong. At some points, this is all that's left of the South Korean side. And like, they're almost about to sail away. They're almost about to sail away, okay? And at some points, it's like all the way up here. And the North Koreans are pushed out, and then it gets pushed back. But like, there's millions of people dying at every stage of this war, and it ends up right here. Circumcision. Yeah, I mean, actually, I don't think my drawing was perfect enough. Look at this, dude. Look how close it was to being totally over. And already 200,000 people dead. And this is the very beginning. Now we're at like near 500,000 people dead, and it's pushed over this way. And it's basically almost over on this way. Now we're at like 1 million dead. 1 year, 1 million dead. And that's how it ends. Isn't that crazy? And it's not even really talked about that much, the Korean War.
Also in the 70s and 80s, you have a few moles as well. They weren't really sympathetic to the Soviet cause, but they were taking money and in return giving the Soviet Union secrets. Famous example of an American mole is Aldrich Ames, who was working in the FBI. The Soviet Union was giving money to him. He was giving secrets to the Soviet Union.
Dude, I feel like being, at least at that time, being a mole, such an easy job. You could just make up the secrets. You know? You can just make it up. You can just say some shit. Just get the money, and like, how can they verify? You can say anything. You're not the only one working as a mole, so they can cross-verify. That's when you get the other moles in on it, bro. That's the trick. What I would do is I would walk around the FBI and I would go, any moles? And then I would find my other fellow agents, and we would make a union, and we would agree to make up information in exchange for cash money. Mole says what?
So those are all the questions for today. Thanks for watching.
I like that. That was good. I thought he had good takes.